Hey guys, welcome back to the classroom. Today we're taking a look at the Caribbean murder rate as it soars, and we're going to unravel the complex web of violence and power struggles. There are five things going on here: the hidden role of the international cartels, the role of governments and corruption, the economic desperation, the rise of local gangs, the silent war for resources, and is there a future of conflict in the Caribbean? Now, I'm going to go through these one by one, and so by the time we're finished with this video, you will understand what is really going on in the Caribbean with the murder rate. We've seen what happened in Trinidad yesterday, where there was a state of emergency declared, and I said I believe many Caribbean islands, others, would follow suit very soon. Let's take a look at this. And based on the research, I will tell you that the rising murder rate in the Caribbean is a troubling trend, and it has captured global attention. The headlines out of Trinidad made it on to the BBC, CNN, and all the international media houses. Even the murder of a Canadian in St. Vincent made it on to the international media. So it's grabbing international attention. There are many factors at play. The situation is much more complex than a simple crime wave. And I found out that beneath the surface, there is a web of interconnected issues involving international power struggles, economic instability, and of course, a number of alliances that are fighting for this Caribbean region. But then when I dig a bit deeper, found out and I started to see a narrative that hints at a hidden war, one that's not only about gang violence, but also about control over the resources of the region and the geopolitical dominance. It's big, it's heavy, but stay with us until the end of this class, this session. Want to take a look at the hidden role of international cartels. One of the most significant, yet it has become the least discussed one, or the factors in the escalating murder rate in the Caribbean strategic location is because of the cartels. See, it's situated between North and South America, and therefore the region serves as a pivotal transit point for drug trade. You see this every year in the reports, particularly for cocaine coming out of South America. And there's a vast inflow of illegal firearms, and there's other contraband heading in both directions. So it's not only going from south to north, it's heading from north to south. So the cocaine goes to the north, the guns comes to the south. Now these traffickers often operating through hidden alliances with rogue state actors, I found out, and they have transformed the region into a battleground, basically. You look at Jamaica, you look at Trinidad, you look at St. Vincent, you look at Barbados, you look at St. Lucia, the crime rate is just escalating. And you're not finding anyone of stature to lock up. You're finding that all of the local boys are going to jail. Now, the Caribbean islands are caught in the crossfire of a global conflict over control of illicit trade routes. You have to dig to see these things. There are major criminal syndicates from Mexico, there's Colombia, and even Europe, which are vying for influence in the region. And they often employ brutal tactics to assert their dominance. I go as far as said there's been some killing in St. Vincent and the Grenadines recently, and the information that I uncovered was that Colombian cocaine was involved. So now you see what I'm going. And some of these gangs, some of them are highly organized. And they're not just fighting each other for turf, but they're also acting as foot soldiers for these international networks. So the murder rate is a reflection of the ruthless power struggle that is playing out behind the scenes that you may not see. Recently, acting commissioner of police in St. Vincent talked about how many gangs were operating in the country based on information from outside agencies. Of course, the prime minister says there are no gangs in the country. The police commissioner says, well, gangs by the definition, textbook definition, it means that there's none in St. Vincent. But the acting commissioner of police is saying, look, 5 to 6 gangs are operating on the island. So there's a hidden power struggle going on behind the scenes that you don't know about. And then we come to the one that everybody talks about, but nobody wants to say anything about: role of government and corruption. You must note that in many of these Caribbean nations, the fight against this rising tide of violence is being hindered by government corruption and lack of resources. You hear people talk all the time on the street corners and anywhere you go about how corrupt governments are and the lack of resources that the police have to work with. So it is no secret that certain politicians, law enforcement officials, and even military figures are involved in the very networks fueling the violence. And this is because there's an allure of massive profits from the drug trade or arms trafficking. It is too strong to resist for some individuals in positions of power. And as a result, these governments often either turn a blind eye to the violence or worse yet, they become active participants in it. We read reports every year about how much corruption is going on in the region and all of this, but yet nobody does anything about it. Matter of fact, in some cases, you have local leaders that have been compromised by foreign interests. And the information that we dug up, it points to, or there's an argument that foreign intelligence agencies, particularly from the United States and the European powers, have subtly encouraged instability in the region in order to maintain control over the drug routes. That is dangerous because it says now that destabilization creates an environment which is ripe for the expansion of organized crime, and it serves as a convenient excuse for foreign intervention under the guise of peacekeeping missions or counter narcotics operations. And you hear them all the time. They talk about how they play a pivotal role in helping these Caribbean governments to eradicate crime from their shores. But you see more, right? So there you go. Of course, all of this corruption and all of this governmental corruption leads to economic desperation and the rise of local gangs on the island. And because for many young people in the Caribbean, the allure of gang life becomes stronger as economic opportunities evaporate. So, with tourism once the backbone of many islands, even though some of are recovering right now, they're facing significant challenges due to both the global economy and the environmental threats posed by the so-called climate change, I would say. And many islands are now struggling to provide jobs and education. Many of them are. And in the face of the growing unemployment, gangs offer an alternative. It's a fast way to earn money, power, and respect, according to the boys on the block. It's an easy path to take when the state cannot provide a viable future for its youth. And if you think I am lying, I want to take you to this article: criminal gangs actively enlisting boys in school uniform. And this is according to acting commissioner of police. And he was on a radio program and he said that criminal gangs in the country of St. Vincent are recruiting boys who are still in school uniform. He says when you look at some of the persons who associate themselves with these gangs, we see young boys who are still in school uniform. And that's the way they choose to go and congregate before they go to class, when they break at lunchtime and in the afternoon, and before they go home. Bailey said the powers that be will soon have to look at laws specifically for gangs. Because pretty soon the powers that be will have to look at the laws and they're geared specifically towards these gangs, because the truth is we cannot allow them to germinate. And he's talking about the youngsters. It's not a game that we're seeing it. It's a serious, serious matter that's going on in the Caribbean. Economic desperation, the rise of the local gangs. But the reality is far darker if you dig deeper. Because as the gangs takes control of entire neighborhoods like they're doing in Trinidad, the influence seeps into everyday life. So you have local businesses that are now faced to pay protection money, and anyone who resists can find themselves a target. So this environment of fear creates, I would say, a cycle. The environment of fear and violence, it creates a cycle where young people are drawn into gangs for survival, and those gangs then clash with others and lead into even more violence and death. So we do have a serious problem. And because of all of that, there's a silent war going on underneath here for resources which we don't know anything about. A lot of us don't know. We hear people coming to the Caribbean region and they say we can provide this amount of jobs if we extract this oil. We can help with your tourism base if we get this little island over here or whatever it is. But there's a silent war for resources, and it's fueling the murder rate in the Caribbean because beyond the drug trade and the rise of gang violence, there are quieter but I would say equally troubling forces at work. And when you look at the information that we uncovered, it's basically telling you that the Caribbean has long been a region of intense interest of foreign powers. Nations with vested interests in the region, whether they be for natural resources, military position, or trade routes, they are known to covertly influence the political and economic structures in these Caribbean islands. And the Caribbean's fragile economies are subject to manipulation, and outside influence often exacerbates local power struggles. So, take for example the sudden influx of foreign investment in certain industries, such as offshore oil drilling and mining. And you look at these and say these investments are often linked to powerful corporations or countries and want to exploit the Caribbean natural resources. While these ventures may appear to offer economic promise, they also destabilize local communities, they displace the populations, and they create conflicts over land and resources. So, as these tensions escalate, violence follows, of course, and the rise in murders may, in part, be fueled by the desperation of local communities caught in the web of exploitation. People come in and they say they want this land to develop a hotel, then locals can't go there, and they feel like they've been abused. They feel as if they're living on a plantation in their own nation, and so they decide to go and crime occurs. So, we've seen it, we know about it. The problem is, will it bring a future of conflict to the Caribbean? Will we be like other nations? Well, the Caribbean murder rate isn't just a reflection of the discontent and gang warfare. It is the visible manifestation of what I tell you is a deeper, a more insidious forces. Because on one hand, it's a struggle of local populations trying to survive amidst the overwhelming poverty and the limited opportunities. And some people say don't call poverty into when you have crime. But that's just a fallacy. Politicians don't like to hear that part, but it is part of our problem. And on the other, there is a deadly intersection of global criminal networks, there's corrupt government systems, and external geopolitical interests. The region is what I would say is a microcosm of a larger global struggle over resources, power, and control. And it's a place where the lines between legal and illegal, good and evil, have become increasingly blurred. So when you hear about the rise in murder rate in the Caribbean, remember it's not just about crime, people. It is about a complex web of hidden battles, each pulling the region in a different direction. And there you have some of your issues, some of your problems. We can go much deeper, it'll take much longer, and I hope you stayed with us during this video. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Spread it far and wide so that others will learn more in this community. All right. Thanks for sharing, guys, and look forward to joining you in the next video.